Welcome back, Renegades. I am Lupine Fiasco. This is Daily FaB gameplay, and today's game is against Teklovossen Extreme Magnate. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the revolution. What we do here is review games that I have played on talishar.net days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed that I lose my bias and can judge my play objectively. I'll walk through turn cycles as if I were playing them now, while giving my thought process for the lines I would take. I compare that to what I did in the past, to either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns. The goal of all this is to optimize and tighten our gameplay going into the future, and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. With all that said, let's jump into our sideboard and our game plan. Today's game features my harmonized Kodachi deck list. If you would like to check this list out for yourself or try it on Talishar, you can find the deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you have not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. It is the best free way to support me, and make sure you see daily FaB content in your video feed 5 days a week. Against Teklovossen, I am going to choose to go second. This matchup is still fairly new. I'm not sure if this is the correct way to approach it. One thought is that Teklovossen wants to set up, so letting him go first may give him the opportunity to play out some evos, maybe even some items that I would rather make him block with on turn 0. But the other line of thought, and what I'm leading with here, is that Teklovossen at his core is trying to hit us, and if he wants to throw any damage our way, then we can block it out on his first turn and crack back on ours. We aren't going to make any changes to the equipment suite here. Part of that is due to my relative inexperience playing against the hero, but the other part is how good a Kodachi Mask of Momentum game plan is against a hero that doesn't start with armor block. Usually playing against mechanologists like OG Dash, we would see them keep cards in hand and block our momentum triggers with armor for the first few turns of the game, just to try to hit us hard enough that we need to block from hand so that we can no longer present these big damage combat chains. But against Teklovossen, he doesn't start with armor value. So if he wants to prevent our Mask of Momentum triggers, he'll need to give us cards from hand, and we can adjust how we sequence our attacks, so that instead of letting him get value from his 3 blocks or his sink belows, we can make him block our Phoenix Flames and our double strikes. So we'll be keeping our harmonized Kodachis and our Mask of Momentum. I could see a world where I bring Spring Tunic instead of Flamescale Furnace, and for my next Teklovossen game, I will be giving that a try. My thought is that this is the equipment that I run in the majority of matchups, and without any reason to deviate from that plan, I might as well stick to it. But after a few games against Teklovossen, my thought is that he is not a very impactful hero. He cannot pressure us off of our game plan, and even his bigger on-hits take some setup, so we don't need to do a lot of blocking. We can bring Spring Tunic and just get bigger combat chains by using the free resource every 3 turns. Mechanologist does not bring arcane damage, so Spell Void and Arcane Barrier are going to be pretty useless to us. Moving into the 60, again, I am just not going to make any changes. If we were running an Emberblade list and had more blues, I could see boarding out Warmonger's Diplomacy for Command and Conquer. Warmonger's Diplomacy just isn't good against Teklovossen. He is happy to take a turn off and choose peace. I don't believe he will have many turn cycles where he is trying to attack and non-attack in the same turn. So Warmonger's Diplomacy really just isn't very useful. But in our Kodachi list, we want to leave Warmongers in so that we don't upset our ratio of blues to reds, and make sure that we can get these large turn cycles. That said, we are not looking to play Warmonger's Diplomacy, we are looking to pitch it. Everything else in our list is here just to help us push damage. So that is the equipment and the deck. We can jump into the gameplay and see how it all comes together. Phoenix Flame goes to the discard, and we can look at what Teklovossen is working with. We see the full set of Teklo base pieces. That's pretty interesting. I'm not really offset by the armor block on this armor because, one, it doesn't do much to block. Yes, it can prevent a breakpoint from hitting, but if Teklovossen blocks with the armor, he loses it. And I don't think he's going to want to do that. So what this armor does tell me is that he is looking to block, then instant speed Evo pieces onto it, and that is cute. But he does go down cards in hand to do that because he needs to pitch a blue to the Teklovossen ability, then pitch another card to play the Evo base, such as Sentry or Steel Soul. So while this armor does look different from what I would expect the Cogsworks pieces. I'm not really put off by it. Looking at what we have in hand here, it is ugly, but we can go 6 links wide on this turn by attacking with a head jab, Kodachi head jab, Kodachi, Phoenix Flame. We aren't going to get a Shuko trigger, and we aren't going to present any devastating breakpoints. We don't have any 4 or 5 power attacks this turn, but we can just play a very efficient 3-1-3, 3-1-1 by pitching this brand with Cinderclaw. With our head jabs, there is no reason to sequence one in front of the other. We aren't necessarily saving our Rising Resentment here. Sequencing it as the third link in this chain can be helpful if Teklovossen lets it hit and we drew into a Mounting Anger or a Bittering Thorns, but I don't think he's going to let that happen. So I am not moved one way or the other. Sequencing here really doesn't matter. We are getting blocks from Teklovossen, and with the Phoenix Flame not being able to generate a Mask of Momentum trigger, and with it not having a Shuko trigger, I am happier to put it in Arsenal than to play it here. This just makes sure that our hand can't brick, and we even see with this hand that if we didn't have the Phoenix Flame in Arsenal, we would not be able to effectively play this hand out. So what we'll do here is we will play our Phoenix Flame. We can break the chain after that. Then we can pitch a Warmonger's Diplomacy to FaB to pick the Phoenix Flame back up. And what that lets us do is attack with the Phoenix Flame. The Phoenix Flame gets its own Shuko trigger. Then we can follow that up with a Kodachi and a Lava Vein Loyalty to threaten the Mask Momentum trigger. It is not pretty. It is not dealing a ton of damage. I would have preferred that Teklovossen sent some sort of attack on his turn that would let us block with a Warmonger's Diplomacy, but it is a way to use this hand in its entirety. It is also a way for us to put multiple small links on the chain that Teklovossen is not encouraged or incentivized to block. That lets us come in with a pretty sizable Salt the Wound at the end of the link. It would be nice to arsenal something here, but I'm not really looking to do it. I would rather maximize some damage. We come in with 2 Kodachis first. Let's see if Teklovossen wants to give us any cards on defense, and he does, which is great news for us. He's likely to use the trick that I had laid out in the game plan, where he will instant out a base head, which he does. This does not remove the head from the combat chain. So while Teklovossen won't lose his head at the end of this chain, he cannot block with the sentry head throughout the rest of this turn. So we are going to get to threaten a Mask of Momentum trigger, and we'll get to do it with a 5 power Salt the Wound. Teklovossen lets it hit. We draw into a head jab, which we will stick in the arsenal. This is great news for us. Note that Talishar has a visual bug at this point where the sentry head looks like it cannot block. That is just a bug. The sentry head can block here. Let's take a look at this hand. This is a clean 6-link turn. We can start with the Rising Resentment, follow that with Double Strike, then come in with either Ronin Renegade or Blaze Headlong. I believe Blaze Headlong is the best card to come in with here. It gets cleanly blocked by 2 sentry pieces, but after that, with only 1 sentry piece left, Teklovossen can't cleanly block the Ronin Renegade, the second Double Strike, or the Salt the Wound. So we can look the sequence 3, 1, 4. And see where it goes from there. Choosing a bit of a different line here, it looks like I might be considering 3, 3, 1. This does get a block from Teklovossen, so we will have a bit of a better second half of this combat chain. The first half of Double Strike is going to go through unblocked. Let's see if the second one gets through. I'm expecting not. I'm expecting this to eat one of these sentry pieces, and it does. So just coming in for a little damage here. We do get to follow this Blaze Headlong with a Phoenix Flame. Just checking the opponent's graveyard and banish here. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. Blaze Headlong does get blocked, and we don't pick up a Phoenix Flame. That is just wrong. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I'm not picking up here, but we should have picked up and played the Phoenix Flame, then followed that with the Salt the Wound. Just missing out on 2 points of damage for absolutely no reason. Here, Teklovossen attacks with Throttle, does banish a Steel Soul piece. This is a weird looking hand. Let's think about how I want to sequence this. You're going to see me play out a Warmonger's Diplomacy, the idea being I want to test it. I'm not sure how good or bad this is against Teklovossen. Let's just give it a try. That is wrong. Warmonger's Diplomacy is just a bad card against Teklovossen because it is very rare that he will have a hand that would prompt him to play an attack action and a non-attack action. So if we are correctly valuing Warmonger's Diplomacy as a card to pitch or a card to block with, we could look at getting 6 links on this chain, just not in a very clean way. What I like doing here is leading with the brand, following up with 2 Kodachis and picking up our Phoenix Flame. Going 3, 1, 1, 1, 3. Soulbead Strike gets the Shuko trigger. Probably, hopefully, baits Teklovossen into blocking from hand. And we can arsenal our Snatch. If the Teklovossen lets Soulbead Strike go through, that's nice. He takes 3 points of damage. We can follow up with a Snatch. That is a double draw trigger, 1 from itself and 1 from Mask of Momentum. But I'm probably going to look to arsenal it. So Teklovossen does block the brand, blocks this Kodachi as well. If this Warmonger's Diplomacy was a Soulbead Strike, because we had pitched the Warmonger's Diplomacy, this turn is looking a lot better. We would still be looking at pushing a potential 4 points of damage here and getting a card out of Teklovossen's hand to block the 3-power Soulbead Strike. Again, I'm happy to experiment. I'm happy to test the power of Warmonger's Diplomacy against Teklovossen. It is actually this game that makes me realize Warmonger's Diplomacy is a bad card against Teklovossen. He does choose peace. We choose war, and we will arsenal our Snatch and draw into kind of a crummy hand. Teklovossen activating the hero power, playing a Steel Soul Head from Banish, drawing into a card which he will then pitch to play Steel Soul Arms. So a very good Warmonger's Diplomacy for Teklovossen. I would have much rather just thrown another 3 damage at his face than play a card that effectively did nothing. As for our turn, this is kind of awkward with not having a blue here. Breaking point value goes way down with Teklovossen not having a card in Arsenal. I believe I am not looking to Snapdragon here, especially with Teklovossen having all of this new armor. I want to throw attacks, try to bait blocks on these Brand with Cinderclaws, and end the turn with a Snatch. I can Arsenal Breaking Point and hope that Teklovossen arsenals a card of his own on his next turn. So this is looking like a pretty easy 3-3-4-1-4. Instead, choosing to throw the Snatch and get value out of the Snapdragon Scalers. I disagree with the line. I don't think it is good or useful. But we are very far ahead on life, so it isn't the worst thing in the world to do. Getting blocks from Teklovossen's hand here, he gets to put a Evo into his discard, which is good for scrapping in the future. We will continue to throw damage at Teklovossen, not particularly cheeky. We have no trick plays here, but we do get more armor from him, which is fine. We are still very far ahead on life, and I am not convinced that Teklovossen can do anything particularly impressive with this many cards left in hand. He does have 3 Evos, though, so maybe I'm wrong. Finishing with a Phoenix Flame and arsenaling this Breaking Point. Drawing into another hand that would be pretty good with a blue. Terminator Tank here is going to make us discard a card. We are looking to discard, I assume, Breaking Point. We can look at this hand and see it really just isn't very impressive. We can throw 4-4-5. Start with Mounting Anger, then Ravenous Rabble, and finish with Breaking Point. Not looking to get the Breaking Point Rupture effect, just looking to throw 13 damage at our opponent's face and trigger Mask of Momentum. We do have another line where we Kodachi Ravenous Rabble, but I don't love it. We can also Mounting Anger Kodachi Ravenous Rabble and hold on to our Breaking Point. It is looking like Teklovossen might try to keep this Arsenal card around, so perhaps we do get more value by holding on to this Breaking Point, but if I'm making the call here, I'm just attacking with it. Choosing to attack with the Kodachi instead is perfectly fine. We will just pass the turn. Seeing that Teklovossen's Steel Soul pieces are getting pretty banged up, we are not expecting him to block with these arms anymore due to the Temper destroying the arms after the combat chain closes. Here, Throttle coming in for 4. I won't be blocking this. Until I see any sort of disruptive on-hit, I am not looking to block anything. Closing out with a Junkyard Dog. This is a lot of damage, and it is setting Teklovossen up for future turns, but even so, we'll block with the first half of our Flamescale Furnace just to mitigate a little damage. Make sure that we do get full value out of our Furnace, but I'm not concerned about my life total at this point. Looking at what's in the hand and what we have available between our Kodachis and our breaking point, Teklovossen does not have an arsenal, but he also only has 11 life left. This breaking point will probably represent half of that remaining life total by the time I play it. So what I might look to do here is lead with Enlighten Strike. E-Strike for 5 with Go Again, bottoms Salt the Wound. That does turn on the red card matters for Blaze Headlong. So we can attack with E-Strike, Kodachi, Blaze Headlong, float 2 resources, and finish with Kodachi Breaking Point. Again, Breaking Point Rupture is not on the table, but it is just 5 damage. Instead, leading with a Kodachi, let's see if I send the E-Strike next. No, we're sending a Kodachi. We'll E-Strike for 5 with Go Again as the Mask Momentum trigger. I think that's fine. I do like the idea of leading with it to get blocks out of Teklovossen's hand early so that he has fewer blocks available for this Blaze Headlong when it comes in for the Mask Momentum trigger, but either way is fine. We're at the point in the game where Mask Momentum is not really the goal anymore. The goal is just killing Teklovossen. So this breaking point represents more than half of his remaining health. And we're just looking to get cards away from him. Teklovossen here blocking for 3, going down to 7. And we will draw back up into a pretty good looking hand. Here, the leveler just comes for 2. We're happy to take this damage. Teklovossen's chest no longer blocks. Teklovossen's head and arms only have 1 point of armor to give before they break to the temper effect. So we are effectively looking at a Teklovossen with no armor block available, unless he wants to lose a piece of equipment. That being the case, we can attack with Kodachi Double Strike, sending very small attacks, but ones which Teklovossen cannot effectively block. We can then follow that up either with a Mounting Anger for 4 to push a little damage and arsenal the E-Strike, or E-Strike for 7 based on the game state at the time. Choosing instead to lead with the Mounting Anger, we will likely follow this up with Kodachi Double Strike. I'm not sure that I agree with this line. Teklovossen is putting a lot of effort into this Steel Soul chest. Fabricate coming down is going to give additional block value to the Evos. I would like to see how Teklovossen would treat Kodachi Double Strike. So while I do appreciate leading with the Mounting Anger, baiting blocks early so that blocks are not available for our smaller attacks coming next, I do think we could have gotten more value by forcing all of this action out of Teklovossen early rather than letting him get value out of all of it. Potentially, he could have done all this on our Kodachi's Double Strike, and then we get to come in with a Mounting Anger, and here coming in with E-Strike for 7. This is an effective enough line considering the life totals and Teklovossen's available resources, but I do think we could have been much more clever on this turn cycle rather than trying to brute force our way through a Teklovossen 4-card hand. Now, Teklovossen's use of the Fabricates there does keep the Steel Soul pieces around with 3 battle-worn counters, which is really cool. That's a cool line that Fabricate is able to be used in that way. It doesn't help him block with these pieces, but it does keep them around in case the game goes longer. It won't, but it is neat. Of course, the hand we draw into is absolute garbage. No blues, no natural go again, and without Snapdragon Scalers, we don't have much of a line here. We can attack with our Kodachis and a breaking point, but that's kind of it. Yeah, that really is the best we have available. Coming in with the Ravenous Rabble, first flips a blue, pushes 2 points of damage. Neat. At this point, I am looking to come in with a Kodachi, play the breaking point by pitching a Lava Vein Loyalty, and keep a Lava Burst in arsenal. It is a clever use of the Furnace. I'm glad I caught that in the past, letting us throw an additional Kodachi in here. Breaking point just comes in for 5. The Rupture is active, but of course Teklovossen has no arsenal, so this is just damage. And it does get a Sink Below out of Teklo, but we still push a damage over the top and set this Lava Burst into arsenal. Drawing into a pair of blues and an Art of War. This game feels very over. Teklovossen just attacking for 2 with the gun. We could put our Mask of Momentum in front of it, correctly choosing not to. While we are likely not going to trigger it again this game, it is worth holding on to. Teklovossen has the full Evo setup now, so all of his Terminator tanks and war machines are going to be completely online. Let's throw the Ravenous Rabble. Depending on what it flips, Teklovossen may underblock. If he blocks this 4-power Ravenous Rabble with a 3-block, then we Art of War over the top and just kill him. We're going to play the Art of War here regardless of the 5-block. If this draws into another Art of War, we can push 1 point of damage over the top of blocks. Instead, it doesn't. We just draw into a Bittering Thorns and an E-Strike. Bittering Thorns coming in for 5 will get blocks out of Teklovossen. We can follow up with a Kodachi for 1 and a Lava Burst for 6. Teklovossen, I don't believe, has a way to prevent 6 points of damage with 1 card in hand and the armor he has available. And we see that is the case, so we do take the win. Overall, not a particularly difficult game. I think Teklovossen is not good against FaB. I don't believe he can present enough disruption that he will ever pose a threat to us, and in the time it takes him to set up these big 4 Evo plays involving Terminator tank or War Machine or the fully leveled leveler, he's just going to take a bunch of damage and then dies. But the Teklovossen games I have on my channel are early days. This list seemed quite a bit more refined. And we did see that Teklovossen put us down to 12 life. Now we did have an effective 5 more life through armor, but I think this was a much better representation of what we can expect from this matchup, which is not a lot. That said, we saw me get sloppy over the course of this game. forgetting to pick up the Phoenix Flame early on, which lost us 2 points of damage. Playing out the Warmong's Diplomacy, while good for experimenting, was ultimately a mistake, and that's something we can take into our future games. And we did see cool Teklovossen plays using Fabricate. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned something from this game, if only just don't lose that edge when you're playing against matchups that are quote-unquote free, because the longer you treat a matchup as free, the more you will pay for it in the future. If you did enjoy this game, please make sure to head jab that like button for me. My comments are open if you have any questions or feedback for me. And otherwise, I am looking forward to seeing you all again next week for more daily FaB gameplay. If you were playing in a Pro Quest this weekend, good luck. I will be competing as well, and I hope you all walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard, or a PTI if you're into that sort of thing. I'll talk to you all next week. Have a good one. Take care.